All right, let's open the case file. We're heading back in time to the gaslit, fog-choked streets of 1888 London. And this isn't going to be your typical documentary, no. We're going deep, right into the original police files to get the real story of the hunt for Jack the Ripper, straight from the perspective of the officers who were on the ground. You know, for over a century, this one question has just echoed through history. A phantom stalked the East End, committed these absolutely unspeakable acts of violence, and then just vanished, like a ghost into the London fog. So, was he some kind of criminal genius, or was the investigation itself, flawed from the very start? Let's dig in.
So to really understand the killer, we have to first understand the men who were hunting him. The Victorian police force, well, they were already stretched incredibly thin. And the Ripper murders, they were about to push them right to the breaking point.
Okay, look at the date on this, October 9th, 1888. This is right after the infamous double event, where two women were murdered in the same night. And what do we have here? We've got the head of the Metropolitan Police, Sir Charles Warren, basically suggesting that his force should be in more constant communication with the City of London police. I mean, that is a stunning admission. You've got two separate police forces working the biggest case in the country, and they're barely even talking to each other.
And it wasn't just internal struggles. The police were absolutely drowning in public hysteria. Just try to picture it. Every single day, sacks of mail show up, and they're just filled with letters from a terrified public. Every letter has a new theory, a new suspect, a new guaranteed clue. The commissioner himself said they were inundated. And this mountain of information, almost all of it totally worthless, just buried the investigators. It pulled them away from the actual police work that needed to get done.
And this wasn't just a short-term problem, not at all. Check out this date, September 1889. That's nearly a full year after the main string of murders. The new police commissioner is desperate. He's pleading with the Home Office for 100 more men. He's basically admitting that despite everything they've tried, the killer just keeps evading them. It really shows you a police force that was just consistently understaffed and frankly outsmarted.
So, with conventional policing totally failing and public pressure at a boiling point, the authorities started to get, creative. Or maybe desperate is the better word. They began looking at methods that were way, way outside the normal playbook for Victorian law enforcement.
These were three of the big ideas that were floated. First, you have silent boots. I mean, that seems logical enough, right? Trying to sneak up on the killer. But the police reports from the time said they were exhausting to wear and made the officers' feet super sore. But the other two ideas? Wow, they were far more radical.
Commissioner Warren himself was really skeptical about using bloodhounds. And you know what? He had a point. Can you imagine a dog trying to pick up one single scent on a grimy, crowded London street that's just teeming with hundreds of people? It was a logistical nightmare. This wasn't some clean cinematic crime scene. It was a chaotic, contaminated mess.
Now, get this. This absolutely wild idea didn't even come from inside the police. It came from a member of the public. A guy named Thomas Blair writes to the police suggesting they get male officers, dress them up as prostitutes, and use them as bait to trap the Ripper. It's just an extraordinary suggestion that tells you everything you need to know about the level of public fear and their desperate desire for any solution, no matter how extreme. And then, just when you thought things couldn't get any stranger, everything changed. As the police were grappling with all this public panic and these bizarre tactics, the investigation took a really dark and dramatic turn. Letters, supposedly from the killer himself, started to arrive. The murderer wasn't just a shadow anymore. Suddenly, he had a name and a taunting, terrifying voice. Okay, this is probably one of the most vital facts of the entire case. The name Jack the Ripper, it was a self-appointed nickname. It was created by the killer, or more likely, a hoaxer, who signed it at the bottom of a letter. And the police, they made a really fateful decision to publish it, hoping someone might recognize the handwriting. Instead, what they did was create a legend. They unleashed a monster into the public imagination. So this is one of the very first letters they got, and just listen to the tone. It's almost pathetic. I am in misery with nightmare. He claims he wants to surrender. So what is this? Is this a genuine cry from a tormented soul, or is it the first move in some kind of twisted psychological game? And that little drawing of a coffin where his name should be, it's just chilling. But then, just days later, bam, the tone completely flips. All that remorse, gone, replaced by pure defiance. I mean to make a dozen of it now, he writes. is even mocking the police for being at the crime scene. This letter, signed Jack the Ripper, reveals this manipulative and just terrifyingly unpredictable mind.
So that decision to publicize the Jack the Ripper name, it had an immediate and catastrophic effect. It completely opened the floodgates. All of a sudden, everyone with a pen and a sixth sense of humor became Jack the Ripper, sending hundreds of hoax letters to the police and the press.
And this put the police in an absolutely impossible position. I mean, think about it. They were already understaffed, already overwhelmed, and now they had to analyze every single one of these letters. Because what if? What if just one of them was real? What if they ignored the one clue that could actually break the case? Every letter was a potential lead, but almost all of them were just dead ends designed to mock them and waste their time.
And here's a perfect example of the chaos. The fear wasn't just in Whitechapel anymore. This letter, sent from Birmingham, claims the killer has moved and is going to continue his murders there. The police had absolutely no choice but to investigate, which strained their resources even more and spread this terror all across the country. The level of detail in this particular letter, that's what makes it so bone-chilling. It was sent directly to Dr. Openshaw, a pathologist who had examined one of the victim's kidneys. The writer correctly states it was the left kidney, a fact that was not public knowledge at the time. This letter, which became known as the From Hell letter, it just felt different from the others. It was personal, it was knowledgeable, and it was deeply, deeply disturbing. Could this be the real Jack the Ripper?
So, despite all the letters, the desperate measures, the thousands and thousands of hours of police work, the murders eventually just stopped, as mysteriously as they'd begun. The file never officially closed, but it went cold, leaving nothing but questions behind. So, when we look back through the evidence from their own files, the reasons the case went cold become pretty clear. The police were fighting a war on multiple fronts. They were up against a phantom killer, a dysfunctional system, a total flood of false information, and of course, the limitations of their own time. They had no fingerprinting, no DNA analysis, none of the modern forensic science that we take for granted today. And that brings us all the way back to our central question. Looking at these internal documents, seeing the incredible challenges they faced, from their own infighting to the sheer chaos of the hoax letters, can we really say the police were to blame? Or were they just completely overwhelmed by a perfect storm of factors that allowed the most infamous killer in history to just escape? The case file is open. You be the judge.